Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into Genesis chapters 21 through 24.
Right.
A really pivotal section, I think, sometimes maybe overlooked compared to the flashier bits before it.
Definitely.
If the start of the Abraham story was all about the divine promise, kind of the what if, well, these chapters feel like the big shift.
Yeah, the tectonic shift. That's a good way to put it.
This is where the promise stops being, just an idea.
Exactly. It becomes tangible. It starts moving into actual history.
And it's about transitioning that promise, that covenant, straight to the next generation, to Isaac.
That's the perfect framing. Genesis 21 to 24 is really a theological statement. It's the narrative saying, look, Yahweh's promises, they happen in real life through real history. It's not just words.
So we're seeing themes of what? Faith? Promise?
Faith, absolutely. Covenant continuity is huge.
Yeah.
And divine providence, seeing God's hand guiding things.
And the events covered are, well, they're massive. You've got Isaac's birth. Finally.
After all that waiting, yeah.
Well,
Then the expulsion of Hagar and Ishmael, which is tough.
really tough. And then the binding of Isaac the Akeda. Just incredibly intense.
And finally, the story wraps up this section with finding a wife for Isaac, Rebekah, securing that next link.
And we need to ground this, right? Remind ourselves this is happening in a specific time and place.
Crucial. We're talking Middle Bronze Age, roughly 2000 to 1500 BCE.
So the social rules, the laws, the customs, they're different.
Totally different. Complex tribal structures. Abraham's decisions about, burial plots or inheritance or even sacrifice. They had real-world consequences that shaped everything for his descendants.
Okay, let's start with Genesis 21, that long-awaited fulfillment. Isaac is born.
Yeah, verses 1 to 7. And that theme of laughter, it changes, doesn't it?
It does. From Sarah's disbelief, that sort of cynical laugh earlier, to just overwhelming joy. It's the physical proof, isn't it?
Yeah.
The covenant is real. God showed up for this barren woman.
And then, boom, almost immediately after the celebration. Cut. Domestic warfare, basically. Sarah demands Hagar and Ishmael be sent away.
And reading it today, you just recoiled. It feels so cruel.
It does, and it's okay to feel that.
Yeah.
But we have to understand the context. The narrative is reflecting some pretty harsh legal realities back then about inheritance.
Can you expand on that? Because, yeah, without the legal background, Sarah just seems vindictive.
Sure. There are strong parallels in ancient Near Eastern law codes. Think Code of Hammurabi, for instance.
Okay.
Laws 144 to 146 deal specifically with situations where a handmaid bears a child because the primary wife is barren. Once the wife does have her own child, like Sarah with Isaac, the handmaid status and her child status often plummeted.
So inheritance rights could be lost, or
Yeah.
they could even be expelled.
Exactly. To protect the primary lineage, the main heir, Sarah is basically leveraging a known legal mechanism to ensure Isaac gets everything.
Okay, so the story isn't necessarily saying Sarah did the right thing morally, but it's showing her using the legal power she had.
Precisely. It acknowledges the existing power dynamics, the structures needed to separate the lines of inheritance for the covenant's sake.
And that separation is key, isn't it? It leads to that really important distinction the text makes.
Yes. Critically important. Ishmael's expulsion does not mean God rejects him. That's a common misreading.
Right. The text is careful about that.
Very careful.
Yeah.
God hears Hagar and Ishmael in the wilderness. Ishmael gets his own divine blessing, his own destiny as a great nation.
So you have the specific covenant lineage through Isaac, but also God's broader compassion and plan for Ishmael. Two different tracks.
Two destinies. But the covenant election, the specific promise through Abraham, demanded that singularity through Isaac.
And this links to Abraham's growing status too, right? Later in chapter 21, that treaty with Abimelech.
Good point. That treaty isn't just a side note. It shows Abraham is becoming a recognized power in the region. Politically, militarily, he's gaining legitimacy.
That legitimacy then flows right into chapter 23, doesn't it? With Sarah's death and what seems like a really mundane section about buying land.
Yeah, it seems like just a real estate deal. Why spend a whole chapter on it?
Exactly.
Because it's one of the most vital historical anchors in Genesis. Abraham buying the cave of Machpelah.
The burial plot.
Yes. He goes through this very elaborate, very public negotiation with the Hittites, the sons of Heth.
And he insists on paying full price, a huge price, even when Ephron the Hittite offers it for less or even free. Why?
He needs that purchase to be absolutely, undeniably legal and permanent. He refuses it as a gift. He pays top silver.
So it's about the deed.
It's all about the deed. The whole transaction perfectly mirrors the formal structure of Hittite and Hurrian property contracts we've found archaeologically.
Really? Like specific details match?
Oh, yeah. Detailed descriptions, witnesses' names, specific boundaries mentioned. It was designed to be legally ironclad according to the laws of the people living there.
Wow, so this isn't just about burying Sarah. This is Abraham establishing a permanent legal foothold in Canaan.
You got it. It's the first piece of the Promised Land that he actually owns, legally and irrevocably.
So the implication for later Israel, this legitimizes their claim. It's not just a divine promise floating out there.
It's anchored. He has the title deed. That abstract covenant promise is now literally rooted in the soil of Canaan through a recognized legal act. It connects faith to physical owned land.
Okay, so he secures this physical anchor, this land, and then almost immediately we hit Genesis 22, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac.
Yeah, talk about a shift in tone. From legal security to the ultimate test of faith.
The text frames it explicitly as a test, doesn't it?
Yeah.
God testing Abraham, demanding, well, everything, absolute surrender.
It's maybe the most ethically jarring, most difficult passage in the entire Hebrew Bible for many readers, that raw command.
Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love. The text piles on the emotional weight and offer him as a burnt offering.
It's brutal, and this is where we have to tackle that huge misconception head on.
The idea that this somehow endorses child sacrifice, or that God wanted it.
Exactly. The people read this and think, see, God approves of this. That's fundamentally misunderstanding the story's purpose.
Okay, so how do we square that circle? The command seems absolute.
Because the climax of the story is the interruption, the substitution.
The angel stopping him, the ram caught in the thicket.
Yes, the entire narrative builds to that moment of substitution. It functions as a powerful, dramatic rejection of the child sacrifice practiced by surrounding Canaanite cultures.
So it takes the patriarch right to the very edge of that horrific practice.
To the brink. And then Yahweh definitively says, no, not this way. Not my people. The ram replaces Isaac.
So the point isn't the willingness to kill, but the revelation that this God demands faith and obedience, not that kind of bloodshed. It redefines worship itself.
Precisely. It's an ethical watershed moment. Worship is now defined by faithfulness, by trusting God even when you don't understand, not by ritual killing of the innocent. The covenant promise is reaffirmed after Abraham shows that faith.
But it's reaffirmed without the sacrifice of the child.
Correct. That act secures the promise, but the interruption secures the ethical future of his descendants. It sets them apart.
And thinking about the human cost here, the sources often point to Abraham's silence.
It's deafening, isn't it?
He doesn't argue, not like he did for Sodom where he haggled with God.
Yeah.
Here, facing this command about his own son, silence. What does that tell us?
I think that silence speaks volumes about maybe the trauma involved, the sheer weight of the command.
Yeah.
It suggests that this ultimate test required a kind of faith that goes beyond argument, beyond reason maybe, a complete devastating surrender.
It connects faith to this deep human vulnerability, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It makes the story, despite its extreme nature, somehow relatable. We understand that kind of gut-wrenching internal conflict, even if the specifics are unique. His silence highlights the agony.
So even though the demand itself is shocking, the ultimate outcome is this profound ethical shift, defining how his people will relate to God moving forward.
That's the core, an ethical transformation born from the crucible of faith.
Okay, so after the Akedah confirms Isaac is the undisputed heir, the focus immediately shifts. How do we secure the future through him?
Right. He needs a wife, and not just any wife.
Genesis 24. It's a long chapter, detailing the search for Rebekah. It feels like it's about faith guiding family duty almost.
It is. Abraham is old, Sarah is gone. Isaac needs a wife from their own people back in Mesopotamia, not from the local Canaanites. The covenant lineage needs to be preserved, kept distinct.
So he sends his most trusted servant on this mission.
One of the longest chapters in Genesis, as you said, dedicated entirely to this one task. And the emphasis throughout is on divine orchestration, God's providence.
The servant gets to the well outside the city of Nahor, and he prays for a sign. Right.
A very specific sign. This is often where people get tripped up thinking it's just luck or coincidence that Rebekah shows up.
That's the misconception, that the servant just got lucky.
Yeah, but the text goes out of its way to show it's not luck. It's providence.
How so?
The servant doesn't just pray, God, send the right woman. He prays for something incredibly specific and, frankly, demanding.
Okay.
He asks that the chosen woman will not only offer him, a stranger, a drink from her jar,
Right.
but that she will also spontaneously offer to draw water for all 10 of his camels.
10 camels? That's a lot of water. A huge amount of work.
Exactly. It's a massive undertaking. It's a sign of extraordinary generosity, hospitality, and industriousness. It reveals her character.
So when Rebekah immediately does exactly that without being asked for the camel part,
The servant knows this isn't just a nice girl. This is the specific answer to his highly specific prayer. It's divine guidance confirmed by human action.
it shows God's sovereignty working through human choices then.
Perfectly put.
Yeah.
The servant had to make the journey. He had to pray specifically. He had to observe. Rebekah had to choose to be generous and act. God's plan unfolds within their actions.
And then there's the negotiation with her family, Laban and Bethuel.
Right. And again, the process described, the way the servant presents his case, the family's response, it aligns really well with what we know about ancient Mesopotamian marriage customs and negotiations.
So it's a blend of relying on God, but also following the proper cultural steps. Diplomacy.
Cultural diplomacy meets divine confirmation. The servant lays out the whole story, how God led him, and Rebekah's family recognizes it too. They say, this thing comes from the Lord.
They see it as divinely ordained.
They do. And Rebekah herself agrees to go. Her agency matters too.
And the chapter ends with Isaac meeting Rebekah.
A beautiful closing. Isaac is out meditating in the fields. He sees the camels arriving. Rebekah sees him.
And the text says Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And significantly, it adds, so Isaac was comforted after his mother's death.
That's such a key line. It brings emotional closure. The covenant continuity is secure. The next generation is established. And there's healing after the loss and trauma. The transition is complete. So we pull back and look at these 4 chapters, 21 through 24. What was the main goal of the writers, do you think?
Well, it seems like they're really trying to hammer home God's faithfulness, right? The promise to Abraham is being fulfilled, Isaac is born, the lineage is secured.
Absolutely. Affirming Yahweh's faithfulness is central. And alongside that, there's that major ethical revelation we talked about with the Akedah.
The rejection of child sacrifice, redefining worship.
Exactly. And third, preserving that covenant continuity through Isaac, through the specific marriage to Rebekah, through legally owning a piece of the land.
So for the people hearing or reading this originally, the message was?
Trust God. Trust in his providence, even when things look impossible or confusing. See your identity rooted in this covenant, established through faith, tested, and ultimately fulfilled by God's action in history.
And these stories, because they're so foundational and, frankly, so dramatic and complex, they get looked at through all sorts of lenses today.
Oh, definitely. Modern scholarship brings different perspectives. For anyone listening who wants to explore more, there are various critical approaches.
Like?
Well, a literary reading might focus on the structure. How Sarah's doubtful laughter at the beginning transforms into the joy of Isaac's birth, and the success of finding his wife. It's a narrative arc, from doubt to fulfillment.
Okay. What about other angles?
A feminist lens, for example, digs into the power dynamics. The tension between Sarah and Hagar isn't just a personal spat. It reflects the harsh realities for women in patriarchal societies. Their struggles for security, status, and a future for their children, often pitted against each other.
That makes sense. And Abraham's silence during the Akedah.
That's often explored through a psychological lens, looking at the potential trauma, the cost of that kind of faith, the surrender of personal will. What does that do to a person?
It humanizes him, maybe. Shows the immense burden.
It can, yeah. And finally, a theological lens often picks up on that substitution of the ram.
Seeing it as foreshadowing.
Yes. Many read it as prefiguring later Christian ideas about substitutionary atonement, one dying in place of another. So it's seen not just as an ethical statement for its time, but as pointing towards a future theological concept.
So many layers. These chapters are incredibly rich. Hashtag, tag, outro.
Absolutely. If there's one core takeaway from Genesis 21 to 24, I think it's this. The covenant identity, the very basis for this people, it's received through faith. It's not earned by works.
Right.
It's secured through tangible actions, like the land purchase. Showing faith has real-world implications, and it's refined through testing. That testing isn't punishment. It's how obedience is proven, how faith deepens and maybe even transforms.
Okay, that's a strong summary, and maybe that leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. It comes back to the Akedah. When you read that story, where do you place the emphasis? Is it primarily about the immediate ethical command God saying no more child sacrifice?
A historical ethical correction.
Or is its main significance theological setting a foundation for ideas about absolute surrender, about substitution? That will echo much later, or maybe it's both.
That tension between the immediate ethical impact and the potential foreshadowing, that's where so much of the power and the ongoing debate about that story still lies. Something to think about.